Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Lolita Guarin. Did I get that right?
Yes, 100%.
So I wanted to ask you, what is your definition of stress?
My definition of stress is anything that makes you cross the being just comfort boundary. When you are in a situation when it's comfort, then that's your normal. So there is no stress. But as soon you step out of that, that's where you feel stressed. So, for example, if somebody says, I never stress in my life, well, why are you wearing clothes? Because you cold, your body was stressing, you put something on.
So it's interesting. So you're saying defining something that comes outside of your comfort zone that causes a stressor. Is it a physical, mental combination of both? Or does it matter? Like I'm trying to see if there are different definitions that we can go by what we mean about stress.
So I think for me, since you asked what my definition of
Yeah.
stress is, it could be physical or it could be just really mental. For example, if you grew up in the environment where your normal was constantly stressing out, like my was, constantly being on alert or always hyper vigilant, don't know what's going to happen. That was my normal to be on that stressful situation. For somebody who's looking at me and my environment that I grew up with, if they did not grow up in that kind of environment, they could look from their point of view and say, "Oh my gosh, that was very stressful. How you grew up? I don't know how you did that." But to me, that's my normal. So I'm like, no, I'm fine. That's how I roll.
Yeah, it's exactly what I wanted to kind of bring up. So let's start with your origin story. And I want to dive deeper into that because I think it's really important what you just said. A stress to somebody may be the normal for somebody else. And even thinking about somebody else's situation can stress somebody out, even though that person is in an environment that's comfortable for them. Or I would say being comfortable, being uncomfortable, or something like that when you have to be in that kind of environment. So, where did you grow up?
So I was born in Soviet Union. Yes, I just aged myself here. But I came from Lithuania and I came to US 24 years ago. And my dad was alcoholic. I'm the only one child. So although my mom had no problems with addiction and she was holding the household pretty normal, so make sure I'm taking care of and everything is okay. But my dad was high functioning alcoholic, although you never know what he would look like that day. Sometimes he doesn't even come home. Sometimes he comes back and he's being violent. Sometimes he's okay that day. So hence that's where my environment was always chaotic and I was always afraid to go home after school. So for me that stress was that's my normal. And so when I came to US, I knew that that's the country of opportunities. And if I really want to achieve my American dream, I can go to that tree where the money grows and pluck those dollars, right? That's what they told me it is.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what everybody does when they come to America. They plug the money tree.
Yeah. So I couldn't find a tree. So I was working for, like for as long as I could. It basically what happened because I was not taking care of my body, not eating, and just like regular human needs of sleeping well and make sure you have nutritious food and all of this, I really put more stress into myself. And that's when my body just give up, like, oh, come on, like I'm already coming very stressed out. So the threshold is like, okay, how much can I put myself out there? And then when I added more stress and not taking care of myself and my mental health and my body, physical body,
Yeah.
that's when my body said, okay, I think we need to stop here. And
All right.
that's how I became sick. And then I got my journey into stress management. And after that, I became a coach because I just became so passionate to say
Yeah.
that we don't have to be really stressed.
Well, you just basically fast forwarded the entire story, so I don't have to ask you any more questions. We're good. Now, I want to go back to the origin story because I think it's important for people to understand. First of all, I don't think people understand what we mean by Soviet Union. Second, I don't think people understand what we mean about Lithuania. So I was born in Lithuania. I was born in Vilnius. I came to the United States when I was 6 years old. So it was 79 we left, 80. So it's been I'm older, seasoned. So it's been a while, but just trying to understand. And from my experience, I don't really remember much as a kid, but I went back to Lithuania. I had a relative who his son was getting married, so he invited family from all over the world. So I'm like, what else I'm going to have an opportunity to go back to where I was born to kind of see it. And I saw it with my own eyes about 20 years ago or so. That was when I went. So when I got to see everything, I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. I mean, for me, it was sort of two parts of a city. And like I said, I was only in Vilnius. I think I was in Kaunas as well. But two parts. There was like the old city, beautiful and historical. And then there's the communist version, which is gray and ugly and the same over and over. But the first experience I had there was two experiences, and I'm going to lead to a question on this. I'm just telling my story so we can relate on this. We got picked up from the airport, got driven to outside the city through the forest and whatever, and there was a house, and we pull up in this house, and it's big, and there's like little tiny shacks everywhere, but this person's house was big. And then a woman walks out, and she says with this guy, don't get out of the car. One of the dogs escaped. We just called the fire department, not to tell everybody to come out. So my uncle, whatever, had these huge guard dogs that would roam the property. And so that was my first experience there. And the second experience I had, we went out to eat somewhere, and there was a whole bunch of kids who were begging for food. And I was like, oh, let me give them some money. They're like, no, 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 no. Don't give them anything. This is all a ploy. They're working for somebody. It's like Slumdog Millionaire kind of thing. And don't give them anything because they'll mark you. Then you'll get robbed later on. So I'm just trying to explain to people, and I don't know if it's true or not. I have no idea. This is what I was told. I'm just trying to say that there are so many stressors that are unfamiliar to me as a foreigner in this land. I'm visiting. It may be normal for the people who live there, but for me coming into an environment, I'm already feeling different stressors. So I'd like to get an overview, first of all, of a little bit more about your childhood. I'm an only child as well, so I understand a little bit about your childhood. Like, what was that like? What kind of child were you? What did you want to aspire to be? And how does that having this father who has unpredictable behavior, how does that affect you in the terms of what kind of childhood you wanted to have?
Um, so just going to the childhood that I grew up like in Soviet Union, then when Lithuania became independent. When you mention like, oh, you always need to be careful. Yeah. So it's like you do not leave your valuables just, on the table anywhere. It's like in US here, you go to the restaurant and you're like, oh, okay, or like in the coffee shop. Like, for example, I do a lot of writing and things I do in my coffee shop, and I just leave my laptop and, I take my phone. I'm like, okay, I'll go to the restroom. Like in Lithuania, you usually would not do the thing because as soon you leave some belongings, they're already gone. Um, and so there was this always of you always have to be cautious. And also on top of that, I'm a woman, and so you always, if you walk alone, you also need to be also very cautious where you go there too. But in the Soviet Union, also the times where there was a lot of lack. It's not like you go to the supermarket and you buy anything that you want. It's like, okay, you buy whatever they had that day. But of course, Lithuania was always very rooted into um, agricultural country, so it's not like we were starving because we always can go to the market and somebody was grew some vegetables in the back of the house that they could sell. So there was no starvation. Actually, Lithuania was um, shipping a lot of the food and the cattle back to Russia to feed them. But overall, there was this thinking of like, okay, there is lack. So you're already starting with this lack. But there's a question that I've been asked, like, well, if you grew up in the lack, just mean you're more stressed out. But they think it's not about how many things you have. If you grew up in the environment that you have only, let's say, only two pair of shoes, but that's all you know, you're not going to see this as lack. You will think, hey, I have two pair of shoes. This is awesome because somebody else has only one pair of shoes. What the pressures and the stress really comes what environment you grow up in. Because somebody could be in Soviet Union, Lithuania, and will in somebody family will be here in US, what they're millionaires, they have 150 pair of shoes. But if those two families have dysfunctional family where the children not really being supported, where they don't feel safe, it doesn't matter or how much do you have, how many of those shoes you have, because the what all we humans need is to feel safe. And safety was not there for me, because we already mentioned my dad was alcoholic. I have no idea what's going to happen any day and how bad is going to happen. So safety, also knowing that I am loved and appreciated and validated. Obviously, I didn't get that either because, well, my dad was drunk. What kind of a fatherly love did I get? Almost none. Uh, and so I didn't get those things for me. And then naturally, when I was growing up, I already knew that I definitely want to have a better life. And that was one of the things that they wanted to go to US. I think there was also one part of it is like I was thinking, okay, I can get money, I can get all of this. But now when you ask me this question, I think it has to do a lot with my mental state of me wanting to go as far as I can from that land.
Trying to
So
escape.
I
Yeah.
would not go to that childhood trauma again. And I get a lot of questions like people ask me, well, do you go there a lot? And I'm like, no, I don't want to go there. I'm like, do you people understand? Every time I will pass on the street, I will pick up all of those memories, how unwanted and unappreciated and scared I was. I'm like, I don't want to be there.
Yeah, there's definitely triggers in mind. But did you still have any aspirations like as a child? Were you into academics? Were you into sports, or you didn't even have a chance to be in anything because you were sort of in survival mode at the time?
So to be honest, I was very creative, and I think that is one of the things that really kept me sane, because I love playing on piano, and I also was writing poems and was published in the magazines since I was a teenager. Writing was one of my expressions, and I think when I was playing the piano and writing something, that's where I felt really free, that I can do whatever I want to do. And probably if I would not have that, I hope I could have find something else how I can express myself, because that was the area where I could feel myself and safe. So I think that's why it's very important to any environment that we are, even if we're adults now, no matter where we live, we need to find that expression somewhere that makes us feel good about ourselves. It makes us feel do something that we like to do every day in order to be feel fulfilled and happy and then healthy.
How did stress manifest itself in your life? Like you probably had, a buildup of stress, and we can talk about the actual chemical, like what actually happens in your body. But I'm just talking about not physical, talking about mental. Uh, when did you actually come to a realization that stress is impacting you, in some way?
So it started. It really what happened with all the stress that accumulated in my body that it really resulted in my hormones just being messed up. And the women and hormones, we need to
But
be
how
very in
did you
balance.
realize that? Like, what was happening to you? Were you getting sick? Were you having, emotional? Was it a combination of both physical, emotional health? Like, how did it manifest itself?
You see, the thing is like when we look at the emotional part, um, since I grew up in an environment that was very unpredictable, and most of the us adults not really being told how to manage emotions since we're kids. And my parents were very emotional. One moment everything is okay, the next moment there's this fight breaking up. So expressing emotions and being emotional and feeling crying one moment and laughing another moment, another time I want to be by myself, another one I want to hang out. All this roller coaster to me was a natural thing. That's like, but that's my normal. I was not really self-regulating because I didn't know what that means. So when I was, let's say, already an adult and I'm already stressed out, I just continue doing the same thing what I'm used to. Is when I get overloaded, I I get into okay when I feel like I'm very low, then I crash, then I start crying, then feeling pity, and then finally cry myself out, and then now I'm gonna pick myself up again and find some hope, and then I'm gonna be go forward again, and then that cycle will repeat because I would not know how to self-regulate. So when I was stressed out and I was approaching my situation like that the same way as I was doing a child when I was a child, to me that's normal. So I did not identify that as, oh, I'm stressing out. I need to start taking care of myself. That was not the indication for me that now I'm stressed. Because that looks the same to me normal. Hence normal, the same, I'm fine,
Yeah.
but that impacted my body physically. And when it messed up my hormones, the rest of the body just started doing all the stuff that's ended up in the emergency room. And that was the moment when I thought to myself, okay, now I really need to start really paying attention to this. Because when that happened, I was in my 30s. And like, well, you're in your 30s, you're so healthy and young, and nothing should happen to you. But when it actually started impacting my body physically, now there was a huge wake up call.
So, I mean, I'm glad you actually went into that because, you know, some people feel that the cycle of stress, what they're going through, is normal, right? So it is a normal thing. I came from an abusive household. So I can relate to what you're saying about, state safety and unpredictability, and it creates a lot of stress. That stress, and my mom used to tell me like, what can you, every disease is caused by stress. And I was like, okay, I mean, but I'm experiencing that stress. How is it manifesting? What is the mechanism that at work here? And, you know, a lot of people have to have something that actually happens, like a crash, like you had a crash to make them realize because you're in this pattern. You're in a pattern of, fight or flight all the time. And your body's, you were not equipped for fight or flight. We're equipped for fight or flight when there's a lion chasing us in the jungle, but not in our normal everyday. So there is definitely your body's telling you you're not listening to your body. Your body's telling you after a while. So I'll tell you a story. I don't think I've ever told this before, but I'll give an example because immigrating to the United States was an extremely stressful event. Like this was 19, I mean, for us, we had to go within different countries. Now, I was a kid, so I turned 7 through the process of, it was 1980 and we got here and my grandfather, we came with both my parents and my maternal grandparents. My grandfather had a stroke after 1 year of being here and he proceeded to have many different strokes. But the point of that, I feel, also he was an alcoholic and he had a lot of issues with it, with that. But that stress of actually coming to America and immigrating and leaving your everything behind, well, I think that impacted him as well. In addition to all that, so you have a vessel, and over time, it keeps getting fuller and fuller and fuller. And then all of a sudden, it starts spilling over. And when it starts spilling over, it manifests itself in, an emotional event, like you were saying, I'm crying, I'm doing, or manifests itself in a physical combination of both. So I wanted to see if there are actual signs and things that somebody can see along the way, because they may not notice. As you just said, it's normal for them. They're in this hamster wheel of doing the same thing. Are there any signs that people need to look for that's saying, I'm in a pattern of stress, and at some point it's going to spill over? How do I do that in advance of that spilling over?
So the first what comes to my mind is it's very important to also notice that, for example, the heart disease, it is caused by inflammation, and
Yep.
inflammation in the body is caused by stress. So something can happen like accumulated, and then you just bam, you're sick, or some things accumulating and accumulating chronically, you're just getting this constant stress until it builds in the heart disease and you get the stroke and all of this stuff. But the first thing, what it's just is asking yourself, like, okay, um, how am I feeling? Am I feeling happy? And of course, a lot of us who's listening and like gonna roll the eyes, like, yeah, okay, whatever. But no, that's what it is, because it starts at the moment when you don't feel happy with things, when you have to do things that you don't want to do, but you push yourself, when you dishonor your needs, when you dishonor your values and your goals, then you get disappointed because you do not feel yourself. So then you keep running on empty, then you push yourself more, then you get disappointed, then you get depressed, then you keep on pushing yourself, and then it turns out a burnout, because you're not giving yourself what you need, is helping yourself mentally, helping yourself physically, and having things that you like to do, and being in the place that you want to be. And a lot of us think that that's how it's supposed to be, because that's just normal, everybody's stressing out. But those little things starts with, yes, with the same little thing of, am I happy? Am I happy where I am? Am I happy with myself? Because that's everything starts from there.
So is there a certain process that somebody needs to go through? You're absolutely right. Like stress definitely manifests itself in the body through inflammation. Uh, I'll play devil's advocate for a second. I'll ask a question. Is there some stress that's good? Do we need to have some stress?
So some stress is good if it is in a short period. For example, somebody can be working on a project and they thinking, no, I really need to get this through. And then you finally finish with this big thing. You are not sick nor anything. You are like just pushing yourself. And then you get sick right after that. How many times we had that? It's like, whoa, because when you have a short period of time when you stress, your body prepares for that fight, and your immune system actually gets strong at that moment, but it cannot carry on for that long. So
Mhm.
then when you finish something and you're now not stressing, you're more relaxed. Then when you get sick, you can get a cold, you can get the flu, or you can pick up some virus, because your immune system was holding off for so long that now cannot do it anymore, and like, okay, now I'm out. So for the short period of time, it can make you more energetic, more driven. It's basically, you're running from a lion.
Yeah.
So you fast, you're good to go, but not for the long time.
Are there things that you can do? And you alluded to it a little bit. You started. Are there things you can do to help either manage stress or maybe prevent the manifestation of the adverse effects associated with stress?
So I think there are our about 7 human needs, or 7, 8 human needs.
Yeah.
If you meet them, you will be probably stressing very little. Although, first, we cannot eliminate stress. Stress is good, so we would know where we're going. It's kind of like, when you driving a car and you have a red light showing that the tank is empty. You need that to show you that tank is empty, right? So you can keep on putting gasoline, so continue driving. The same is with stress. It's we need to take a feeling of stress and noticing is like a warning, like, okay, I'm put myself too much. So we need that in our bodies. in our mind, like we need to feel where are we. The same like you look in the nature, when you look at the grass coming to the concrete, obviously we're stressing to grow that, right? But not to prolong. But going back to the human needs, first, and this is nothing new, we need to make sure we have enough of sleep, good nutrition, make sure we're feeling safe. That means we are in the environment where we know will not be attacked, hence that safety. If you grew up in an environment you didn't get it, that's obviously affecting you a lot. Then all those like a normal human needs. And then I think we moved into territory that it's very important to do something that we love doing it. And I there was this one aha moment for me when I remember I was working in a full-time job, and I was doing something that I was okay doing it, but I was writing the books already and everything. So by the end of the day, I was like mentally fried. I felt like I cannot even think straight because how tired I am. Oh, because I was doing something I was not enjoying really doing it. And then I thought to myself, okay, well, I can start doing something now. Good, I'm gonna get home and I'm gonna start writing. And I felt immediately this passion just came out, and I was very clear in my mind. I was inspired. I was full of energy, and I'm like, how does this happen? Like within 5 minutes, I changed the point of view about what I'm going to do, and that immediately sparked so much passion, because when you're doing something that you like doing it, you feel happy. So when I work with my coaching clients, I tell them you need to do every single day something that you love doing it. And yes, I'll hear now probably a lot of rolling eyes and thinking, well, that's easy for you to say. But something simple like, I don't know, having a cup of coffee, or let's see, reading a book. But then it's like, wow, we're so busy, we cannot do this. I have a family, I have a business to run. And they say, you know what? Okay, let's just say reading a book. You don't have to read the whole chapter, but if you just read every day one page, what's going to happen is you know that by the end of the day, you will reward yourself with something that you love doing it. And at the same time, when you constantly show up for yourself and you do something rewarding for yourself, this is where you're not abandoning yourself. That's very important to build trust with yourself. So then you are feeling um, safe being with yourself. And when it comes to stress, in the future, all the worries, the futures can be very stressful because we feel that we don't have control over it. But if you are constantly sure for yourself, you do not abandon yourself and your own needs, you honor your emotions, you honor your needs, you build the trust with yourself that in the future, whatever will show up, stressful or not, you will be able to handle it.
Is that part of, I think I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, the calm process? Is that part of your methodology?
So the calm process that I came up with one day is just abbreviation for, it's a process that can be done with any stressful situation. And I can expand on that if you want me to.
Sure. Yeah, please.
So um for example, it could be even if you're sitting in traffic and you're late for a meeting, or you are just realize you have cancer and now you have to go through treatment. Or so it could be a small situation or big situation, but anything that is stressing you out. And I think we get stressed out because we cannot control the situation. So the calm processes starts with the C. And first you need to really identify and decide, can you control the situation? If you can control it, then you can start controlling it. You can take action. But if you cannot control it, just worrying about that is really not going to help you at all. And so then in the second letter is A, is appreciating or accepting what's happening. Some situations in our lives, well, if you cannot do it anything, you just have to accept it and just let it unfold. Some things happen in our lives because it brings something else that maybe will bring like a silver lining. So there's not all the situations that will be harmful to us, but like to try to see something good at that. Change the perspective, and the changing the perspective, it means a lot in a lot of stressful situations, and not necessarily stressful situation, but of our own life. And then letter L is for limiting what does not work. So many times, we continue doing the same something over and over, although we already know it's not working, but we're still doing it. Maybe somebody told you that you need to do this, or even yourself, you're afraid and you don't have enough courage to start doing something new. But that is, when you continuously doing the same thing over and over, but expect different results, that's what the insanity is. So, but really having enough courage to look at the situation and say, okay, what is that I'm doing that's not actually working? So you limit that as much as possible. And then M stands for multiplying. That's the opposite. You look at the situation and then acknowledge and give yourself credit for what is that you already doing that's actually working.
Mhm.
Many times we condition from the early age, to always pay attention to the bad things what we do.
Mhm.
That's where all the negative self-talk comes in. But if nobody told you that you need to give yourself credit for just being you or handling the situation right, you will not pay attention to that. So it's very important for you also to see in that stressful situation, what is this exactly you doing that actually is helping you? And then do more of that. If you cannot find what else can help you, then you can ask for help. And I think, and multiple times that I went through the same process for anything little, always worked, because when you go through this process, you realize that you can control situation, and then when you can control it, you feel more safe, and then usually the stress subsides.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have an acronym where you can kind of follow the steps in that process. Um, are your parents still with us? And are they together? What's the
Yes,
uh,
they also came to US, and they live two
okay?
miles away from me, and they still live together. Their marriage still works, and I'm very happy for them.
What's your relationship like with your both your parents now?
There was a lot of uh, you know interesting when I became stress management coach. I paid attention a lot of, okay, how I need to change my life to to give myself more grace and forgiveness, and I need to sleep and eat and all this. I became a coach, and I was reading a book about how to build coaching business, and the author, that was the first time when I heard the terminology adult child of alcoholic,
Hmm.
and I had no idea what it was. And then when I got into books, what does that mean, and what stands behind that, it explained a lot how I behave, why I'm so stressed out, why I behave to stress the way I behave, and all of that, what that childhood, dysfunctional childhood, really brought into my adult life. And the first thing that came to my mind was a huge disappointment of thinking, oh my God, I'm broken. There's no hope for me. That's it. This is the, I'm already starting behind. But of course, I went through that of thinking, no, that's not how I want to live. I can have an amazing life if I want to, because I'm the one who's building my life. But there is something else that showed up that has to do with my relationship with my parents. I got a lot of anger of thinking they failed me as parents, because they're supposed to create this environment where I feel safe and appreciated and loved, and hence all I got feels to me like I was just stressed out and invalidated. So that was a lot of anger that was not sure how to process this, until the moment I realized that there is no parent in the world that wake up in the morning and says, today is a good day to hurt my children. I don't think there's a parent who does like that. We all of us are trying to do the best. Even the
Hmm.
worst person on earth always tries to do the best. And I think that hurt people hurt others.
Right.
And I thought that my grandpa, on my mom's side, was also alcoholic.
Yeah.
And when you think Lithuania, we is generational trauma that continuously going and keeps on going. And for example, somebody can say, well, US, this better, well, we don't have this, but no, that's not true, because there's always generational trauma that comes from that has nothing to do about the money. It's about how well loved and appreciated and accepted you were. And so when I finally realized that my parents also coming from the same kind of environment that I grew up in, that's when I finally found the understanding that they were doing the best they can. They themselves had no idea what a good parenting is. And that's how I found the peace and the forgiveness, because I know they were doing the best they could.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things for people to really understand that, you know, coming from an abusive household, coming from a household, and you wrote a book about this, and I want to get into that as well. But coming from a household where you didn't have safety, alcoholics, all that stuff. First of all, that is generational trauma. Second, I look at my own self, like my dad grew up sort of in the same type of environment that I grew up in. His parents may have been doing it to him. Their parents may have. So at some point, somebody needs to break the pattern. So it takes some bravery for a person to be able to do that. I was arguing with my dad one time. We were just going back and forth. I had the same experience. I was able to forgive and change my entire relationship with myself, and then obviously with my parents as well. But he was complimenting me on my parenting skills, and my I said, well, I just kind of do the opposite of 180 of what you did with me. He did not appreciate that at all. I mean, it's somewhat true. Look, they did the best they could and all that stuff, but carrying around that weight that somebody gave you to carry is a heavy burden to carry on your shoulders. Why do you want it? And the ability to be able to shed that weight of anger and frustration and pointing fingers at somebody else who's not feeling that, you're carrying that burden on yourself. That creates a whole bunch of other compromising stress and all these challenges that are happening. You said it right. I mean, you have plaque buildup, inflammation. You have inflammation. You have cortisol release in your bloodstream. Your immune system is overreacting to this. It's always trying to catch up. People are getting sick. Why am I getting sick all the time? I'm healthy. Look, I go to the gym. I run. What are you doing with your stress? Well, no, I manage stress. I meditate. 10 minutes a day. Okay, is that it? Is that enough? Are you actually able to cut the cord that you're tethered with for your past experiences? And sometimes what you do today in the moment doesn't really necessarily mean that you're giving up that burden you're carrying on yourself. So I think it's extremely important to be able to convey that. One more question about your history. So when you went through this experience and it manifested itself in a physical, hormonal state, physical overreaction of hormone levels and inflammation, all those other things, and you came to a realization that you have to do something. What did you do, and how did you get yourself? Maybe you found coaching, maybe you found, Tony Robbins, or maybe you found, Joe Dispenza. I don't know. What was your process that you followed first to get you to the point of where you were becoming a stress management coach?
So I really started what they call the stress management bandages. What, everybody roll their eyes, and just starting paying attention where you spend your time. Start learning to say no to people, to projects, to even to yourself. Learning the boundaries. Of course, the self-talk, and really starting honoring yourself and thinking, okay, what am I feeling now? This is okay to feel? Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. I just want to make sure I asked the question clearly. What you're saying is right on, but how did you know how to do that? Did you read a book? Did you find a video online? Like, how did you know that that bridge, when you hit, and I'll call it your sort of rock bottom moment, when you hit that, what did you do to have to bounce back and start rebuilding yourself?
Well, I just went to the bookstore and started reading books on stress management. Then there are plenty of online courses and coaching and anything. The more you get into that, the more there is that you actually can get even free things. You don't have to buy anything, especially right now online. But the key is really of doing it.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to a little bit something to touch, which it's very important to not everybody will be doing. I can give a lot of tips what to do, okay, but not everybody will do it. And this is all because it goes back into loyalty, and the loyalty is to that dysfunctional family. It is the loyalty to, I'm going to continue doing the same thing what I'm learned to do, because we're humans and we need to be in the group in order to survive. So I'm thinking, okay, my parents doing something that I need to continue doing the same thing. So to be loyal, I'm afraid to do anything different from what I'm being told to do, because then I will disgrace this connection. Hence, they will exclude me from the group. Hence, I will die. That's how the brain thinks. It wants to stay safe. It wants to stay alive. So, there's a lot of with my clients that I tell them, okay, you can start doing something small. Like even a simple question, I say, okay, tell me something that you like to do, and you can do every day. They don't even know what they like to do, because when somebody grew up in a dysfunctional family, what they were, they're not even feeling that they're allowed to express themselves. They were
Mhm.
not even allowed to know what they like, because they became somebody by people pleasing. They became that other person to their family in order to survive. So when somebody is stressed out, and we can say now, okay, well, go and do your breathing and yoga and all of this, but they will not be doing that, because they feel like they have to be loyal to that unit that they grew up in, and to do anything different than that or become some different person, which is the person now they probably stressed out, burnout, and probably ill. They don't want to change that identity because it's very threatening to them and to their own survival.
Uh, I mean, it makes so much sense because I think people get in this pattern. You got to interrupt the pattern in some way to be able to start, change. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so much content out there. It's taken action, and some people, it's more comfortable for them not to take any action. And you know, let's. I have the intent to do that. I'm gonna start tomorrow. It's funny. I had an uncle, and I have an uncle, and it's like a family joke about the gym, like 100 different gym memberships, all that stuff. I'm gonna start on Monday, and we always joke about it because he's always starting on Monday, never starts anything. So it definitely makes sense. When did you say you were writing already, but when did you come to the decision that you're going to write your first book? And how did you
So
come to that decision?
the first book about stress, I wrote 8 years ago, and it's called Crush Stress While You Work. Um, I realized that a lot of people spend time in the workplace. The majority of time is spent in the workplace. And that's what my biggest burnout was. I would be like working 50, 60 hours a week every weekend where I work, and afraid to even take a break, like, and because I'm just gonna push it. I'm gonna make that money, and that's where a lot of this bulldozing yourself into the success come from. And that's why I started writing about how to manage stress in the work environment, because that's the majority of time that you spend in.
Mhm.
But then now last year I published a book called Stress Management for Adult Children of Alcoholics,
Right.
and that is diving deeper into how someone who grew up in a dysfunctional family, and not necessarily has to be alcoholic, okay,
Right.
because it's dysfunctional family, kids from those families has very similar set of mind, and how to manage stress and why they will react the way they react in situation, and what to do about that, and start training themselves how to soothe themselves, how to I have like a whole book full of tips and tricks, and that somebody can go through the uh, different workbook questions that they can help themselves and create their own customized stress management tools.
Yeah, I think it's so important because, and I'm glad you said that because I was going to ask you about, it seems to me that children of alcoholics, there's a parallel between children of other dysfunctions. That physical abuse, or I mean, I guess years ago, being physically punished for doing something wrong is typical upbringing, right? We look at it as abuse. I mean, I don't do that with my kids, so but it builds. There's a pattern that's similar to the children of alcoholics, to the children of who were abused, who were neglected for many different reasons. And I grew up as a quote unquote latchkey kid, right? So you come home from school, you take the bus to school yourself, you go home from school, you get your bike, you go play with your friends. When the lights come on the street, that's when you have to come home for dinner kind of thing. And nobody knows where I am. Nobody cares. No cell phone, none of that stuff. And we're all like, oh my God, don't go outside. Oh, be careful on the driveway of the street. It's like, don't drink that water may be unfiltered. Well, we were drinking water out of the fire hoses. We were fine, but but there's still all this stress that happens from your environment, and you think about it, you're bringing that back home, and then as you said, generationally repeating that over and over, you start handing that off to your kids, and it continues. So interrupting that pattern is key, and taking action. And I think that's the biggest obstacle in people working on themselves and even writing a book. You know how many people I talked to said, writing a book, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. I started thinking about writing a book. I started writing the book, and then it never really actually followed through. So how do you motivate somebody? Do you have to hit rock bottom, or is there something you can do beforehand that actually explains to people? I mean, like, you can talk about it. You and I can sit here and say there's 1,000 stories. People have heart attacks. I just talked to my grandfather. I had other friends of mine who had physical ailments, who had mental conditions, all this stuff. You can avoid and prevent that by taking some action. But how do you get somebody to take action?
So there's this one question that my clients hate when they start coaching with me, and so question is, you need to ask yourself, how is this serving you? Because everything we do, it's serving us. Even killing ourselves is serving us in order to be accepted in a group, in order to survive. So somebody, for example, let's say they never can go to the gym. They say, oh, I don't know, just I'm tomorrow. The question is like, how is you being not fit serving you? It's like, what do you mean? Of course it's not. So of course I want to be slim. Like, no, let's get deeper. It's like, oh, because then, my family, nobody going to the gym. So I don't want to go to the gym because they're going to point fingers at me. Hence, I don't want the criticism. I want to please them. So hence, I'm going to be the same as them. So I will be safe. Just like in the short. So always ask yourself, how is this serving you? It's a very hard question. But as soon you go to the belief, what is standing behind it, then you can change all that.
I believe, I agree with you. I believe it's a lack of accountability. And by having a coach or having an accountability partner, it makes you do the things that it's very easy for somebody sitting on a couch to say, I'm going to go to the gym. And you start getting off the couch. And you're like, man, those snacks look so good. You know what? I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow. Today, I have these, this. too tired, a long day tomorrow. But if you have an accountability partner that holds you accountable to showing up, you have to show up. And, there's a carrot or a stick. I'm not a big stick person, but there's incentive. You give yourself that little carrot to be able to show up. But it's very difficult, especially people who are in this pattern of you, as you were saying, this hamster wheel. You need to interrupt that. And by having somebody in your life like yourself, like a coach or an accountability partner, when you're about to get off the couch and you sit back down and that accountability partner says to you, come on, man, it's going to be great. We'll celebrate afterwards and we'll go do something fun. And, I don't know, whatever that dangling carrot is at the end, maybe that's the way to get people. And once you're in this pattern, now it becomes more habitual, I guess, to yourself, but it's getting off your ass and actually doing something that is the most difficult thing I feel.
And I think the rewarding yourself is very, very important, because remember at the beginning of conversation, I said it's very important to do something that you like to do, meaning that you will be looking forward to. That brings us hope. That is the reason, okay, so I'm going to look to the end of a day. I'm going to look at the end of my result when I'm going to achieve that goal. There is a intention behind it for you to take some action. And if you have nothing to move forward to, that's where you get depressed, because it's like useless. You become hopeless, and that's what the stress comes in. And when also what happens when you reward yourself, this is where you are acknowledging yourself. You're giving yourself credit. You say, yes, I did a good job. I'm proud of myself. And especially those who grew up in the environment where they're not being validated, now validating ourselves is very, very important. And we may not even know how to do that because, well, nobody told us to do that. Even worse, could be said, no, you never talk good about yourself. You always, you always push yourself down. You always humble and please others. But that's not how it is, because if you help yourself, you love yourself, you feel yourself, and that's how you can give all that love and support towards others.
Yeah, and you just sort of alluded to what I was going to ask you, if there was a relation between stress, anxiety, and depression. And I think you sort of started, saying about that people revert back and feel depressed because they can't really make a change about something, or they feel a certain way about themselves. Do you and you can elaborate on that if you want. I just want to ask a quick question that came to mind. Do you still feel like you need some validation or love or something from your parents that you may have not received as a child? Now as an adult, do you need it? Do you crave it? Do you still want it from them, and do you receive it, or you give enough to yourself where you don't?
Now I'm giving up to myself, because there was one of the things I realized that um, in many things they cannot even give me validation because they don't know what I'm really even doing it.
Yeah.
It's like the same comes from thinking and processing the negative criticism from them as well. It's like, okay, how qualified are you to give me criticism, and how qualified you are to give me a reward? And the one person that I always think is like, okay, if that is that make me happy, if I'm doing, even if I don't get the approval, I'm thinking they have their own reasons. Maybe they don't understand what I'm doing, but I'm gonna give this to myself because I want to make myself happy so I can help other people, and because I don't want to be where I used to be.
It's brilliant because in looking at myself, even in the situation. So I got a few testimonials that were really nice from people. It said some really beautiful things, recorded videos about, my day job, I guess, what I do. And I was so proud of myself. I wanted to share that with my parents. 2 days go by. I ask, you know, any thoughts or feedback? Nah, I didn't even look at it. Oh, I feel like I'm good, but all of a sudden there was a trigger point in me, and I was like, well, why? Look at it. I'd love to hear your feedback. Why? Don't know, but it just happened. So another day goes by and I get a text. Oh yeah, right. It was really nice. Very nice. That's it. What was I expecting? What was I waiting for? Why do I need that? And you just absolutely brilliant. You said that because there's something. Are they even qualified? Why do I care? Do they even understand what I'm doing? And what does it say about me that I'm still, holding out hope that I will at some point receive some sort of validation or patent? Good job, son. You did a good job. Why am I still, searching for that kind of thing? So it makes total sense.
You see, there's also one thing I'll realize as well that has to do with parents is they're not gods. They also human. And if they, it could be like my dad still stuck in his like toddler age. And so it's like, well, if they're not even capable of experiencing some things and giving me what they want, how can I count against them? They're not giving it to me. They're not
Yeah.
capable of giving it. Also, many times I remind myself that they also triggered because they also have their own childhood traumas. So it could be that my success really just points to them. I'm thinking, wow, she's going after her dreams and I didn't go after my dreams. So now I feel bad about myself. Hence, I'm not going to tell my child that you're doing great and awesome because then I will tell myself that I disappointed myself and probably disappointed my own parents.
Yeah.
So it goes multi-layer and multi-layer, but many times it's always comes to themselves, and that's why they're doing it. There's some pain behind it.
Man, on point. That's exactly what I was trying to, put together. It comes back to them. And you're right, because, I've had conversations about, oh, I always wanted to go to Rio, and next time you're in Rio, you should take me, kind of thing. Look, so there's a lack of, and for some reason, what I'm doing highlights that in them as well as human beings. Absolutely on point. So I have some questions, music related questions. I'm a big fan of music, so I ask all my guests. We'll get into this. Easy, and there's going to be a really hard one. Just kidding.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, ready? Do you remember, and if so, what was the very first concert that you ever attended?
Well, I obviously was in Lithuania, and there was a woman singer that she was very, very popular, and her name was Jordana Butkutė.
Right. What was the last concert you attended?
The last concert that I attended, like a big concert, it was here in Houston, and it was Enrique Iglesias with Ricky Martin, and I was very disappointed because Enrique Iglesias was drunk and barely could even sing.
I think he can barely sing when he's not drunk. Just a thought, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But I listened to tapes on Howard Stern where they just isolated his vocals, and they were not really good. He's not his dad, but that's a separate conversation. Okay, another music question. For the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to name the actual name of the album. It could be a Enrique Iglesias or a Ricky Martin album. So what would be those 5 albums that you would listen to for next year?
Um, I would listen to old Italian songs, um, like Albano and Romina Powell, like music like Felicità, because it always brings me good memories when I know that one of those rare occasions that I actually have good memories about my childhood. And I barely can understand the words and it sounds like a great. Um, it's kind of like lives on his own planet of happiness. It always, when I hear those songs, they always brings me that. Um, I always also ask, do I listen Lithuanian songs? Because, I grew up there, I think Lithuanian, and I really don't, because it brings me the childhood trauma. So I do not listen my own words, like the my own language songs much. Uh, I'm a very big lover of symphony and classical music, and my go by is always Bach, and used to love playing on piano. Um, and I also listen to a lot of just instrumental music that doesn't have words, because I just like the feeling of it, and then I can fill in my own gaps. So I don't think I can give you 5 exactly what it is, but within those lines.
Okay, so last question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
I had posters on all 3 walls, and they were from different movies. And I had a childhood dream when Soviet Union was still intact, and I was keep on telling everybody that I'm gonna go to US because I love writing and love new movies, and I want to be a screenwriter, and I'm gonna go to America because I'm gonna go to Hollywood, and I have a bunch of posters of all kinds of movies. And I remember my mom telling me, "Stop telling to everyone because you just look insane." But then Soviet Union fell apart, and I'm here. So I'm like, it came true.
There you go. Do you remember any of the movies, like a few that you had the posters of?
Like, for example, it came to my mind immediately. I have Jumanji,
Uh, got it.
and yeah, and then I had something with Brad Pitt over there as well, and Back to the Future, and all of the things. And sometimes you get posters in the bookstore that the movies just kind of came out, and some
Yeah,
of them older ones. So it really will depends, what the bookstore has that moment.
got it. Lolita, where can people engage with you for your coaching? Where can they buy your books and connect with you on social?
So if for all of that, you just can go to my website, beamazing.com, and then I have links going from there for booking a session with me or inviting me to speak, or go to my books online, books or membership and all of that.
Great. And for my audience, once again, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for sticking with us. I hope this was an impactful topic. I think it's hugely important. I deal with people that have physical conditions related to stress, and there's genetics that actually have an association with how stress shows up in your life. Not everybody manifests stress in the same way. And if you're prone to stress reactivity, you're prone to PTSD, and you have genes for that, and you're living a lifestyle that can actually trigger those, just being aware of that, I think, is really important. And, thank you also for all the reviews. I really appreciate the reviews and the 5 stars and whatever many stars. It's all good. It's all learning experiences. So thank you. And Lolita, I want to thank you so much for being on. And I love the information that you're providing to our listeners. And I hope everybody reaches out to you, gets your book, and coaches with you. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for inviting.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.